I found out my husband was recording every conversation I ever had, including the one where I said I wanted to leave him. I didn't understand it at first. My mind refused to accept it. It felt like something impossible, something you only see in movies. But then I saw my own voice on that recording. And in that moment my entire marriage stopped feeling real. My name is Emma Carter and I thought I was living in a normal marriage. Not perfect. Not romantic. Just normal. The kind of marriage where love slowly turns into routine. Where you stop asking deep questions because life feels stable enough not to dig too far. My husband, Daniel, was calm and quiet. He wasn't very expressive, but I never saw that as a problem. I thought that was just who he was. We had been married for 6 years. And over time, everything had settled into a pattern. Wake up, work, dinner, sleep. No big arguments. No major drama. Just silence that I mistook for peace. But I didn't know that silence can hide things you're never meant to discover. Because I had no idea. My entire life was being recorded. Not just moments. Not just memories. But conversations. Private ones. The kind you forget about seconds after they happen. It started on a normal evening. Daniel had stepped out of the kitchen to take a phone call, leaving his laptop open on the table. I wasn't trying to invade his privacy. I was just closing tabs so I could use it for grocery shopping. That's when I saw it. A folder on the desktop. Simple name. Audio logs. I froze for a second. Because normal people don't name folders like that. Something about it felt wrong, even before I opened it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when trust is already starting to crack. So I clicked it. And that's when I saw it. Hundreds of files. All labeled with dates. Day after day. Week after week. Month after month. My heart started beating faster, but I still didn't fully understand what I was looking at. Then I clicked the latest file. And I heard my own voice. Close. Talking about dinner. Talking about my day. Talking like nothing in my life was being watched. At first it sounded harmless. Until I heard myself say something I didn't remember saying so casually. I don't feel happy anymore, Daniel. I feel like we're just living like strangers. There was a pause in the recording. Then his voice came in. Calm. Controlled. I understand. But something about his tone made my stomach tighten. Because it didn't sound like a reaction. It sounded rehearsed. I closed the file immediately and opened another one, my hands shaking now. Then another. And another. Every single one was me. My voice. My emotions. My private thoughts. All stored like evidence. Like I wasn't just his wife. I was something he was documenting. Then I saw a file dated just 3 days ago. My breath slowed as I clicked it. And I heard it. My own voice. Saying words I never wanted anyone else to hear. I think I can't do this anymore. I think I want to leave. Silence followed in the recording. Then Daniel's voice. Not shocked. Not emotional. Just quiet. I see. And that was the moment everything inside me went cold. Because that conversation had happened late at night. In our bedroom. With no one else around. Which meant only one thing. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. My husband wasn't just listening to me. He was recording me. Studying me. Keeping track of everything I said like it mattered more than I realized. My thoughts started spiraling. Why would a husband record his wife's private conversations? Was he trying to protect himself? Was he collecting something? Was I part of something I didn't understand yet? And the worst part. I heard footsteps outside the kitchen. Daniel was coming back. I quickly closed the laptop, my heart pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. He walked in like nothing had happened. Like my entire world hadn't just collapsed in my hands. He looked at me and smiled slightly. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded too fast. "Yeah, just checking something." And in that moment I made a decision. I wouldn't tell him yet. Because something inside me knew this wasn't just about recordings. This was bigger. And I needed to understand the full truth before he knew I was onto him. If you're watching this story right now, don't forget to like the video and subscribe because what I discovered next changed everything about my marriage. And you won't believe what Daniel was actually using those recordings for. After I closed that laptop, nothing in my life felt normal again. I kept acting like everything was fine. But inside I was breaking into pieces I couldn't explain to anyone. Daniel was still the same on the surface. Same calm voice. Same routine. Same quiet presence in the house. But now, I was seeing him differently. Not as my husband, but as someone I didn't fully know. The next morning I watched him more carefully than I ever had before. He made breakfast like usual. He checked his phone like usual. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work like usual. But now every usual thing felt suspicious. Because I couldn't forget what I saw. Audio logs. Hundreds of recordings. My voice trapped inside files I never agreed to. And the worst part, he didn't even try to hide it well. It was there. On his laptop. Like it belonged. Like it was normal. Like I was the only one who wasn't supposed to question it. After he left, I found myself walking back to the kitchen table again. My hands were shaking as I opened his laptop one more time. I told myself I would just check again. Just to make sure I didn't misunderstand something. But I didn't misunderstand anything. The folder was still there. Audio logs. Still real. Still organized. Still chillingly detailed. I clicked it again. This time I didn't open a file immediately. I just looked at the pattern. Dates. Times. Almost every day. Some days had multiple recordings. My stomach turned. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't accidental backup. This was intentional tracking. And then I noticed something that made my breathing stop for a second. Some files had labels like emotional state, argument, marriage talk, decision discussion. My heart dropped. He wasn't just recording conversations. He was categorizing them. Like data. Like evidence. Like I was part of a system I didn't know existed. I closed the laptop quickly and stepped away from the table. My chest felt tight like I couldn't breathe properly. I kept telling myself there must be a logical explanation. Maybe therapy? Maybe work-related documentation? Maybe something I didn't understand yet? But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't normal. Not even close. That afternoon I tried to act normal when he called me. "Did you eat?" he asked casually. "Yes," I replied. But even as I spoke I realized something terrifying. I was now thinking about every word I said. Because what if I was being recorded again? The thought alone made my skin feel cold. I started watching my surroundings without meaning to. His phone. His laptop. Even small devices in the house started feeling suspicious. Because once you realize someone might be recording you, you stop feeling safe anywhere. That night something happened that made everything worse. Daniel came home late. Not unusual. But something about his energy felt different. More distant. More distracted. He barely spoke during dinner. And at one point I noticed his phone on the table lighting up repeatedly. He glanced at it, then turned it face down quickly. That movement was small. But I noticed it. Because now I was noticing everything. After dinner he went to take a shower. And that's when I saw it. His phone, still on the table. Still unlocked. My heart started beating faster. I told myself not to. I told myself to stop. But my hand moved before my mind could stop it. I picked it up. And what I saw made my stomach drop. Not messages. Not calls. A recording app. Running in the background. My fingers went cold instantly. Because it meant one thing. He wasn't just recording conversations from his laptop. He was doing it in real time. Everywhere. All the time. And I was living inside it. I quickly put the phone back exactly where it was and stepped away like I had never touched it. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might collapse. And in that moment one thought became impossible to ignore. Daniel was recording everything. Then he already knew I was starting to suspect something. Or worse. He was waiting for me to find out. And if you're still watching this story, comment below what you think Daniel is really doing. Because what I discovered next was not just about recordings anymore. It was something far more disturbing than I ever imagined. After that night I couldn't look at Daniel the same way again. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was awareness. Something inside me had shifted and I could feel it every time he walked into a room. Like I wasn't just seeing my husband. I was seeing someone who was studying me while pretending to live with me. And that thought alone made my stomach twist. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Small things. Things that didn't feel important at the time. But now felt like pieces of a bigger puzzle. Like how he always positioned his phone slightly angled when we talked. Like how he rarely left his laptop unattended for long. Like how he sometimes repeated my words back to me in conversations. Almost like confirming them. At first I told myself I was overthinking. But overthinking doesn't explain patterns. And I was seeing too many patterns. One afternoon I decided to test something without telling him. We were sitting in the living room watching TV. He was on his phone and I pretended to be relaxed. Then I said something simple. I feel like we don't really talk anymore. Normal sentence. Nothing unusual. He nodded slowly. I know, he said. But this time, I wasn't focused on his answer. I was watching his phone. And I saw it. A small light flash. A notification. Something triggered. Like a system reacting. My heart dropped instantly. Because it didn't feel like a message. It felt like a recording marker. Like my sentence had been flagged. Process. I suddenly stood up. I'm going to make tea, I said quickly. And walked into the kitchen before he could notice my face. My hands were shaking. Because I realized something I didn't want to accept. He wasn't just recording conversations. He was organizing them. That night I couldn't stay silent anymore. When he came home I waited until we were alone. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And for the first time I didn't try to hide my emotions. Daniel, I said. He looked at me calmly. Yeah. I hesitated for a second. Then I asked it. Why are you recording me? The room changed instantly. Not dramatically. But enough for me to feel it. A shift in air. A pause in time. Daniel didn't respond right away. He didn't panic. He didn't deny it. He just looked at me. Like he had been expecting this question. Just not this early. Then he leaned back slightly. And said something that made my blood go cold. You weren't supposed to find that. Silence. That one sentence did more damage than any denial could have. Because it confirmed everything. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't confused. It was real. He was recording me. But instead of fear, I saw control. Because he wasn't shocked that I knew. He was disappointed that I found out too soon. And that scared me more than anything else. I tried to speak again but my voice came out weaker than I expected. Why would you do that to me? He didn't answer immediately. Instead he looked away for a moment, like he was organizing his thoughts. Then he said something even worse. I needed to remember everything correctly. That sentence didn't make sense at first. Until it did. Remember everything. Not trust memory. Not trust emotion. Trust recordings. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about spying. This wasn't about control in the way I thought. It was something colder. More calculated. Like he didn't trust reality unless it was recorded. I stood there frozen. Trying to understand the man standing in front of me. But the truth was, I didn't recognize him anymore. Not fully. Not clearly. And that realization hurt more than anger ever could. Because I wasn't living with someone I knew. I was living with someone I was still trying to decode. And I had no idea what he was building, or what role I was playing in it. Stayed calm after that. I didn't. But I also didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in silence. Because something about Daniel's words had shifted the entire meaning of my marriage. You weren't supposed to find that. That sentence kept repeating in my mind like a warning I couldn't turn off. Not you're crazy. Not you misunderstood. Just, you weren't supposed to find that. Which meant one thing. He knew exactly what he was doing. For the first time I felt like I was looking at a different version of my husband. Not the man I married. But someone who had been observing life instead of living it. And I needed answers. Not assumptions. Not fear. Answers. That night I couldn't sleep. Daniel acted normal again like nothing had happened. He watched TV, checked his phone, moved around the house like the conversation never existed. But I couldn't unhear his voice. I needed to remember everything correctly. That wasn't the answer of a guilty man. That was the answer of someone convinced he was right. And that was far more dangerous. The next morning I waited until he left for work. Then I went straight to his laptop again. My hands were shaking but this time I wasn't searching randomly. I had a goal. I opened the audio logs folder. But instead of clicking recent files I went deeper. Older files. Months back. Then even further. And that's when I noticed something I didn't see before. There were gaps. Specific dates missing. Like certain moments had been carefully selected. And labeled differently. One folder stood out. Not audio logs. Not conversations. Just one name. Timeline reconstruction. My chest tightened. That didn't sound like marriage. That sounded like investigation. I clicked it. Inside were folders labeled with dates and notes. But what caught my attention wasn't just the structure. It was the way he wrote. Short sentences. Observations. Not emotions. Not feelings. Just facts. Emma expressed uncertainty about marriage stability. Emma mentioned leaving during emotional peak. Behavior indicates increasing detachment. I froze. Because it didn't feel like a husband documenting his life. It felt like someone building a case file. On me. My breath got stuck in my throat. I kept scrolling. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop completely. A folder labeled Decision Point Analysis. Inside it were recordings, specifically selected ones. Moments where I sounded emotional. Moments where I questioned the marriage. Moments where I said things like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And next to each file, notes. Not anger. Not sadness. Analysis. Like he was studying patterns in my behavior. Trying to understand what would push me to leave. Or stay. I stepped back from the laptop. My legs felt weak. Because suddenly everything clicked into place. This wasn't about trust. This wasn't even about control in a normal sense. Daniel wasn't trying to spy on me. He was trying to predict me. Like if he understood my emotional patterns. He could anticipate my decisions before I made them. And that realization made my chest tighten painfully. Because I wasn't dealing with jealousy. Or insecurity. I was dealing with something far more unsettling. Calculation. When he came home that evening, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood in the kitchen before he even took off his jacket. I saw your files, I said quietly. He stopped. Not shocked. Not surprised. Just still. Slowly he looked at me. And for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Not guilt. Not panic. But acceptance. Like this moment was always going to happen. You went through it, he said calmly. It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. I nodded. Yes. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then I asked the question that changed everything. Why are you analyzing me like this? He exhaled slowly. And then he said something I wasn't ready for. I wasn't trying to hurt you. That wasn't an answer. So I pushed again. Then what is this? He looked at me for a long moment before finally speaking. I needed to understand what was going to happen before it did. My heart dropped. What was going to happen? He paused. Then said quietly, us ending. The room went silent. Completely silent. Because in that moment I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about what I had discovered. This was about what he already believed was inevitable. He wasn't recording me because he didn't trust me. He was recording me because he didn't trust the future. And somehow, I was already part of a story that had an ending written before I even knew the plot. I stood there in silence after his words. I needed to understand what was going to happen before it did, us ending. It didn't feel like a confession. It felt like a conclusion. Like in his mind, our marriage wasn't breaking in that moment. It had already been broken long before I found out. For a few seconds I couldn't speak. I kept looking at Daniel, waiting for him to say something that would make it less disturbing. Something normal. Something human. But he didn't. He just stood there calmly, like he had already accepted every possible outcome. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a marriage anymore. This was a system he had been monitoring. And I was inside it without knowing. I finally found my voice. So you recorded me, analyzed me, studied me, because you thought I would leave you? He didn't deny it. He just said quietly, I thought I was preparing. That word stayed with me. Preparing. Not trusting. Not loving. Preparing. Like our entire marriage was something he was waiting to survive. Or lose. Something inside me broke in that moment. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Because I realized I had been living in a relationship where I was never fully free to exist without being observed. Every emotion I had expressed, every doubt, every moment of honesty, had been captured, stored, and analyzed like data. And I didn't even know. I walked past him into the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room that suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me anymore. How many conversations had happened here? How many moments had been recorded without my awareness? How many versions of me existed inside those files? Happy me, sad me, angry me, confused me. all preserved like I was a subject instead of a wife. Daniel eventually came into the room. He didn't try to touch me. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood near the door. And for the first time he looked unsure. Not of what he did, but of what came next. "I didn't want to lose you," he said softly. I laughed once. But it wasn't humor. It was disbelief. "Then why did it feel like I was already gone in your head?" Silence. No answer. Because there wasn't a good one. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling thinking about everything I had learned. And slowly one truth became clear. This wasn't just about recordings. It was about control disguised as understanding. About fear disguised as preparation. About love that had turned into surveillance. The next morning I packed a small bag. Not because I hated him. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I couldn't stay in a place where I felt like I was constantly being watched instead of being loved. When Daniel saw me, he didn't stop me. He didn't argue. He didn't chase me. He just stood there, quietly watching. Like he already knew this moment was coming. Maybe he always did. Before I left, I looked at him one last time. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just clarity. "You didn't need to record me to understand me," I said softly. "You needed to trust me." He didn't respond. Because deep down, he knew that was the truth he avoided from the beginning. I walked out of that house with a strange feeling. Not relief. Not happiness. Something more complicated. Like I had lost a marriage. But finally found my own voice again. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not what he did. But how long I stayed in something I didn't fully see. Because sometimes the most dangerous lies in a relationship aren't the secrets. They're the reasons behind them.